The plains were wide and quiet. Morning light moved across the grass like a slow promise. Evan was a rancher who lived by work and patience. He believed land spoke to those who listened. His days were shaped by fences, cattle water, and wind. He had learned early that pain could teach and silence could heal. Beyond his ranch lay a stretch of land people avoided. They called it the restricted area, not because of law, but because of fear. Old stories traveled faster than truth in the West. Men said storms gathered there, and luck broke without warning. Evan never laughed at stories, but he never bowed to them. One morning, he rode toward the edge of that land. His horse sensed a change and slowed its step. Evan felt a pull in his chest like memory waking. Years ago, his father had warned him, "Do not touch what you do not understand." So Evan stopped and listened to wind. A cry reached him thin and sharp. It carried pain and stubborn courage. Evan followed the sound across dry earth. Near a fallen cottonwood, he saw her, a woman clutching her side, struggling to stand. Her face showed strength carved by hardship. She told him the land hurt those who rushed. She said the ground demanded respect. Evan helped her sit and gave her water. He did not ask her name right away. He knew trust grows slowly like grass after rain. She thanked him with eyes that held fire. The woman said her name was Mara. She lived alone beyond the ridge. She guarded the land because it guarded her. She said many came to take and left broken. Evan listened without judgment. He saw not danger but purpose in her words. Mara warned him again. The land is not cruel, it is honest. Touch it without care and it will teach you pain. Evan nodded because he understood. Ranch life had taught him the same lesson. Care brings reward, force brings loss. They worked together to bind her wound. Evan used clean cloth and steady hands. Mara did not flinch. Pain had visited her before and left her wiser. When she stood, she was stronger. Not because pain left, but because fear did. As the sun climbed higher, they talked. About storms that reshape rivers. About loss that makes room for growth. About hope that survives drought. Evan felt something change inside him. A quiet door opening to a new path. Mara said the land chose who could stay. Evan said people choose who they become. Their words manned the air and settled, like seeds finding soil. Neither argued. Both learned. Before they parted, Mara looked at Evan. She said, "If you return, come with respect. Not to take, but to care." Evan promised with his actions, not his words. He rode back with a slower heart and a clearer mind. That night, Evan sat by his fire. He thought of the restricted land. He thought of pain as a teacher. He realized boundaries exist to guide, not punish. In that truth, he found peace. And the first step toward a future he did not expect. The West teaches through silence. Evan had begun to listen. Days passed, but the restricted land stayed in Evan's thoughts. Work felt heavier, yet clearer. Each task carried new meaning. He fixed fences with care. He watched cattle with patience. He learned to slow his breath and mind. One afternoon, dark, clouds gathered fast. The wind changed its voice. Evan knew a storm was coming hard. He remembered Mara alone beyond the ridge. Concern rose in him stronger than fear. He saddled his horse and rode toward the boundary. Rain struck the ground like warning. Thunder rolled across the plains. The restricted land did not reject him. It watched him. Evan moved carefully, just as Mara taught. Not a rush, not a challenge. Only to pass with respect. He found Mara struggling to secure her shelter. The storm had torn apart her roof. Evan jumped down and worked beside her. No words were needed at first. Hands spoke louder than promises. They tied wood and weighted cloth. They worked until rain soaked them both. When the storm eased, they sat under cover. Mara thanked him without softness. Her gratitude was strong and honest. She said few returned after the first warning. Evan said some lessons take time to learn. Their shared silence felt easy. Mara told him her story. She had once trusted the wrong people. They saw land as profit, not life. When she resisted, they left her wounded. Pain forced her to listen to the land. It taught her survival and strength. She stayed, protected, and herself. Evan listened with respect. He shared his own losses. A family broken by pride and silence. a father who worked hard but spoke little, a mother who carried hope quietly. Ranch life shaped him but also confined him. As evening settled, the land grew calm. Mara showed Evan places where grass healed itself, where water returned after drought. She explained balance and patience. The land rewarded care over time. Evan realized ranching could be more than ownership. Over the next weeks, Evan returned often, always invited, always respectful. They worked together, clearing paths, helping injured animals, restoring what others ignored. Pain faded when purpose grew. The restricted area slowly changed its name. Not spoken aloud but felt. It became the protected land. Evan saw how fear had blinded people. Boundaries were not curses. They were lessons waiting for listeners. One morning, Mara collapsed while lifting stones. Old wounds reopened. Evan carried her inside and tended her carefully. He stayed through the night. Fear tried to rise, but he held steady. He remembered pain as a teacher, not an enemy. When Mara woke, she saw commitment, not pity. Something shifted between them. Trust deepened quietly. No grand words, no promises. Just shared resolve. Two lives learning the same rhythm. Evan realized the land had not tested him. It had prepared him. For care, for patience, for partnership. The restricted area had revealed truth. Pain warns but does not forbid. Respect opens paths. As dawn painted the hills gold, Evan understood his future would change, not through force but through choice. He stayed by Mara as the sun rose, and the land watched approvingly. The bond between Evan and Mara grew through shared days. They rose with the sun and rested when stars appeared. Work became lighter when done together. Each task carried quiet respect. Neither tried to own the other. They chose to walk side by side. Evan began changing how he ran his ranch. He reduced strain on the land. He rotated grazing and restored water paths. The cattle responded with calm health. The soil softened and grass thickened. The land answered care with abundance. Mara watched these changes with careful eyes. She saw Evan was learning, without being told. That mattered more than words. She shared deeper knowledge. How to read clouds and roots. How pain in nature signals imbalance. One evening, they found a wounded colt near the boundary, its leg torn by wire left long ago. Evan felt anger rise, but Mara steadied him. They worked slowly to free the animal. Pain filled the air, but so did hope. They stayed through the night until the colt stood. That moment marked a turning point. Evan understood protection was action, not fear. Mara saw partnership was possible without control. The restricted land seemed to breathe easier, as if trust itself healed old scars. News traveled among nearby ranchers. Some mocked Evan for changing ways. Others watched quietly. A few crossed into the protected land without respect. The land answered honestly. Tools broke tempers, flared, progress failed. One man blamed Mara. He claimed she cursed the area. He demanded Evan choose sides. Evan stood firm. He said the land responds to intent, not rumor, not force. Tension rose like heat before storm. Mara prepared to leave. She feared Evan would suffer for standing with her. Evan stopped her gently. He said pain shared becomes lighter. He chose understanding over safety. That night they talked openly. About fear of loss. About independence and belonging. About scars that shape strength. They realized love does not arrive loudly. It settles quietly like dust after rain. The next morning the angry rancher returned. This time Evan met him calmly. He explained the changes. He invited observation, not argument. The man scoffed but stayed to watch. He saw grass regrow where none had before. Slowly doubt replaced anger. Questions replaced blame. Others came to learn. Mara shared selectively. Respect was still the entry price. The land remained honest. Evan and Mara stood together at the ridge, looking over land once feared, now healing. They did not claim victory. They understood growth takes time, and pain is only a warning, not an end. As the sun dipped low, Evan realized something deeper. This was no longer about land or boundaries. It was about choosing care over fear, connection over isolation. The protected land had changed him. Mara felt it too. She no longer stood guard alone. She had found someone who listened, someone who learned through pain. Together, they had rewritten the story, not of ownership, but of shared responsibility. The West watched quietly, as it always does, and waited for the next lesson. Change never moves quietly for long. As the land healed, attention followed. More ranchers, riders, and wanderers came near. Some came with curiosity. Some came with old habits and sharp intent. The protected land felt the weight of eyes. Evan and Mara noticed signs of pressure. Footprints where none should be. Trees marked by careless blades. The land responded with dryness and resistance. Not anger, only honesty. Pain returning as a warning. Mara felt the old fear stir. Memories of betrayal tightened her chest. She considered retreat again. Solitude had once been her shield, but Evan stood steady. He reminded her that growth invites testing. They decided to face the challenge together, not with force, but with clarity. Evan spoke to the neighboring ranchers. He invited them to walk the land slowly, to see what care could do. Some refused, but others listened. One older rancher, named Cole, stayed. He had seen the land fail before. He doubted healing was possible, but he watched grass bend and rise. He saw water return to dry cuts. Doubt softened into respect. Still not all were willing to learn. One night, fences were cut. Cattle scattered into fragile areas. Evan and Mara worked through darkness, guiding animals back with patience. They felt the ache of exhaustion and resolve. Pain returned to Mara's side. The old wound burned with warning. Evan urged her to rest. She refused until the land was safe. Only then did she sit and breathe. Strength sometimes hides inside stubbornness. As dawn arrived, Evan realized something important. Protection required more than two hands. It required shared responsibility. He proposed a new idea, a council of care, not control. Those who wished to learn could join. Mara hesitated. Trust was still fragile, but she saw sincerity in Evan's vision. This was not about ownership. It was about stewardship, about teaching pain before it became loss. They gathered a small group, not leaders, not loud voices, but workers, watchers, listeners. They walked the land together, learning where not to step, learning when to wait. Over weeks, change spread slowly. The land responded again. Grass thickened, streams steadied. People noticed fewer injuries, fewer failures. Respect reduced pain more than rules ever had. Mara began to change as well. She laughed more easily. She rested without fear. Her strength expanded beyond survival. It became guidance. She was no longer just guarding the land. Evan watched her transformation quietly. He felt gratitude, not possession. Care grows best without chains. He realized love followed the same rule. It thrives where respect lives. One evening they sat on the ridge, the sky wide and open. Mara spoke first. She said pain once taught her to stand alone. Now it taught her to stand with another. Evan listened deeply. He told her that boundaries once felt like walls. Now they felt like doors. Not everyone would enter, but those who did would learn. Together they had turned warning into wisdom. The land rested under moonlight, still protected, still honest, no longer feared. Pain had not disappeared, but it had found purpose. In that quiet moment, Evan knew this partnership was more than circumstance. It was choice renewed daily, like tending land, like healing wounds, like listening before acting. The West offered no applause, only space to continue, and that was enough. The season shifted, and with it the weight of choice. Cool mornings replaced heavy heat. The land breathed easier under steady care. Evan and Mara felt a change in their bodies. Less tension, more balance. Pain no longer ruled their decisions. The council of care met often, not in buildings but under open sky. People spoke slowly and listened deeply. Mistakes were shared without shame. Learning replaced blame. The protected land became a living teacher. Mara found herself guiding others, showing where not to walk, explaining why patience mattered. Her voice carried calm authority. Pain had shaped her wisdom. Now wisdom shaped others. Evan took on a quieter role. He worked behind the scenes, fixing what was broken, letting others step forward, leadership to immense service, not control. One evening a young rider was injured. He ignored warnings and rushed ahead. His fall was hard and frightening. Evan and Mara reached him quickly. They tended his wounds with care. The land had warned him and spared him. The young rider wept from shock. He expected anger or rejection. Instead, he received guidance. Mara told him pain speaks before disaster. Evan told him listening saves lives. The lesson settled deep in the young man. That night by the fire, Evan and Mara sat close. Silence wrapped them comfortably. Mara admitted fear still lived inside her. Fear of losing what they built. Fear of trusting too deeply. Evan listened without fixing. He shared his own fear. That love might demand more than he could give. That change might fail. That the land could turn again. They realized fear was shared, not separate, and that softened its power. As weeks passed, something unspoken grew. Not urgency, not pressure, but certainty. They chose each other daily through action, through care, through patience, through standing firm together. One morning, Mara woke weak and dizzy. The old wound had never fully healed. Evan insisted she rest. This time she agreed. Trust had replaced defiance. Strength learned to accept help. Evan managed the land and counsel alone. He carried her lessons forward faithfully. People noticed and respected the balance. The land remained steady. Healing responded to consistency. During Mara's recovery, Evan stayed close. Cooking, learning, listening. He realized partnership meant shared burden, not heroic sacrifice. Love lived in the ordinary moments, in quiet presence. When Mara finally stood strong again, she looked at Evan differently, not as an ally only, but as home. The realization surprised her and felt right. They walked the ridge together at sunset, the land glowing under open sky. Mara spoke softly. She said, "This place changed me." Evan replied, "It changed me too." They did not speak of future titles. No promises, no labels. But their steps matched naturally. The protected land no longer tested them. It trusted them. Pain had done its work. It had taught boundaries. It had shaped patience. It had led them here, to shared purpose and quiet love. The West watched once more, wind carrying seeds into fertile ground, preparing for what would grow next. The final season arrived quietly. No storms, no warnings. Only steady wind and open sky. The land stood balanced under shared care. Evan and Mara walked it together, not as guardians alone, but as partners. The council of care had grown stronger. People came with humility, not demand. They understood boundaries as guidance, not restriction. Mistakes still happened, but learning followed instead of blame. Mara felt her body fully healed at last. Pain no longer ruled her movement. It had finished its lesson. She stood tall without guarding her side. Strength flowed naturally, earned through patience and trust. Evan felt a deep calm settle in him. The restless edge of solitude was gone. He no longer feared connection. Love had not taken his freedom. It had expanded it, rooted him without trapping him. One morning they found the land unusually still. Animals moved gently. Birds circled low. It felt like a held breath. Mara smiled and said, "The land approves." Evan believed her. They spoke openly at last, not with ceremony but honesty. Mara said she had chosen this life with him, not because of rescue, but because of respect. Evan answered the same. They did not rush. No crowd, no announcement. Just a shared decision to build a life shaped by care. The land was witness enough. The West needed no vows. Over time, a home grew near the ridge, built simply, open to wind and light, a place of rest, not ownership. People were welcome when respectful. The boundary remained clear. Children from nearby ranches came to learn. They were taught to listen first, to move slowly, to understand pain as a signal, not something to ignore. The lesson spread further than fences. One day an old traveler arrived injured. He expected refusal. Instead, he received help. Mara tended him. Evan listened to his story. The land once again proved its truth. The traveler left healed and changed, carrying the story forward of a place once feared, now understood, where pain warned not punished, and respect opened paths. Years passed gently, hair grayed, hands weathered, love deepened without drama. Evan and Mara still walked the land daily, still listening, still learning. They never called the area restricted again. It became known as a listening ground, where people learned limits and found balance, where pain taught wisdom and care restored harmony. On one quiet evening, Evan asked a simple question: "Will you stay always?" Mara answered without hesitation, "I already have." Her smile carried no doubt. They stood together as the sun set, land wide and open before them, not owned, not conquered, only cared for. The journey that began with warning ended with belonging. Pain had guided every step, not as an enemy, but as a teacher. The land had never said do not touch. It had said touch with respect. In that truth, Evan and Mara found their union, not claimed by law, but sealed by shared purpose. They were partners of land and life, husband and wife in all ways that mattered. The West remained vast and silent, holding their story gently, a reminder that boundaries protect, pain instructs, and love grows where listening begins.